Welcome to the Heart of Healthcare podcast. Today, Steve and I are talking with Andrew Yang. You may know Andrew for founding Venture for America or his presidential run and push for universal basic income, but his story also runs straight through healthcare. Years building a health tech startup, a national campaign that looked a lot like Medicare for All, and now a startup that is helping people quit their phone addiction. We are so excited to have you here today. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You know, one question I have for you is, if you had won the 2020 election, what would healthcare look like today?
I was pushing for Medicare for all who wanted it. I thought there was a way you could create a public option while not ridding everyone of their private insurance if they enjoyed it. But I thought that there needed to be a more robust public option. And unfortunately, I think we're seeing versions of that play out right now with the Obamacare subsidies elapsing. I thought that Obamacare tried to split the baby in half, and the baby kind of needed to be on one side or the other, was my point of view.
Yeah. It's funny. I have these conversations around the ACA subsidy, debate right now with my friends who are even Republicans. And oftentimes they come back to say, well, why can't we have some sort of, healthcare where the government actually drives down prices? And I say, well, we could have that, and which would be like Medicare for all, or for those who have it. Why is that argument not resonated with people, do you think, Andrew?
It's because our government had a choice to make, and they could either try and bend the curve and break the backs of the healthcare providers' business models, or they could say, you know what, we're going to try and have it both ways. I think a lot of people who listen to your show are investor types. So if you had a publicly traded company that all of a sudden raised its hand and was like, hey, guess what? We're not growing anymore. We don't have any pricing power. Then everyone would flee that stock very, very quickly. And healthcare companies are now in growth mode. And if they can't grow their revenues, then, that they'll be delisted probably eventually. And so the Obama administration didn't go that far. And now Americans, I think, increasingly want to go that far. But as someone who ran for president, I would run into very reasonable seeming folks who work in the healthcare industry saying, hey, FYI, if you do that, I'll probably be out of a job. And some of them were cool with that, but most of them were understandably not cool with that.
Do you think that's true? If Medicare for all were enacted, do you think that's what would happen? Because that actually would, that'd be an issue for a large part of the economy, right?
Well, the people I'm talking about literally worked for an insurance company or worked for device company or something like that. I mean, the average nurse would still have a job. The average physician would still have a job, though their comp might look different. But these were people who actually worked in the industry itself. And for them, it's like, yeah, your job might actually go away. like a medical billing company or like whatever it was. I mean, there are a lot of jobs. I mean, healthcare is up to what? 18% of the economy, something like that. And so you can imagine how many jobs there are that exist because of transactional inefficiency.
Yeah.
And so in the abstract, all of us are like, hey, inefficiency, bad. Like, let's go in, let's get rid of it, let's lower the cost curve. But there are realistically hundreds of thousands of Americans making their living because of that setup.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's such a great point. We talk a lot about efficiency, a lot about administrative waste, but one thing we don't talk about are cities like Pittsburgh, Nashville that are thriving because of the healthcare industry that is employing tons of people. So it's interesting that you say that. Do you think that we are in a different place now in terms of coming together on healthcare costs going too far than we were when you ran? Do you think
Yes.
you could run on that platform now?
Well, I think, I ran on that platform then because I thought it was the right thing to do. I mean, eventually you got to bring the cost down. Just logically, you can't have healthcare just growing in expense because Americans won't be able to afford it and it'll choke the economy over time. It's already choking startups and entrepreneurship right and left. I mean, how many people do we know that haven't made a switch because they didn't want to leave their family in the lurch? They had healthcare coverage that they needed. But the perception has shifted even more in this direction over the last 5-6 years. And the name that comes to mind for me, unfortunately, is Luigi.
Yeah.
That happened during this period. And the mixture of points of view from Luigi Mangione killing the CEO of United Healthcare, I was aghast. I was like, guys, no matter how mad you are at a system, it's not like gunning a person down in the street makes any kind of sense. I mean, it's like brutal murder. I mean, the guy had a family. And the fact that some people were making what I thought of as like ideological points around that struck me as really tragic and sad, but it shows how far public sentiment continues to go.
How do you just switching from that, which was obviously a huge tragedy? How do you think this ACA debate, as we stand here today, it's or beginning of December, end of the year, 2025, unclear. The Republicans in Congress has till the end of the December to, try and come up with a either renew the subsidies or come up with an alternative plan. How do you think that all shapes out, and how do you think it affects the 2026 election?
I talked to folks in DC. I'm still plugged in there because I'm trying to make good things happen. And the atmosphere is not good at all, where that like there are different points of view as to what to do about the elapsing subsidies. Right now, the betting money would be that they don't do anything. They just get ready to play the blame game come January when millions of Americans' premiums spike.
Yeah.
But there are a few Republicans who are wise to this, where they're like, "Yo, the people in my district also are going to hate me when they see their premium spike because they're going to hold us responsible." But the picture does not look good right now for some kind of action by year end.
And on the Medicaid side, we're seeing $1 trillion in cuts over the next 10 years. How do you think that will play out for Americans?
Well, the Medicaid cuts, and this is a very dark thing to say, I think it's going to hurt a lot of American families, but the poor have much less of a voice in American life. And that they're obviously the users of Medicaid. So if you throw indigent families into distress, nothing happens to you politically. The ACA stuff is actually a bigger deal because last count, I think there are maybe like 22 million Americans who might see their premiums spike. And a lot of them are middle class and up. And so they're much more likely to be hanging out with a politician yelling at them at a town hall, whereas the Medicaid recipients don't. And I hope that's not also really news. I mean, it's sad. It's super sad.
Yeah.
But like that, there's going to be much less of a political blowback.
They're already so disenfranchised from politics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Most of them think that they're completely powerless. One of the interesting things about politics is you kind of have to have some sense of confidence or agency to think that you matter enough so that you could go do something. And most people who are on Medicaid don't feel that sense of agency.
Well, I want to transition a little bit, stick on healthcare, but also just the general economy. I mean, you've talked a bunch about AI and its effect on, the economy and the future of American jobs. Like, does the underrepresented, i.e., folks who don't have a job and maybe no way forward, presumably comes larger with AI? And like, how does that mean that group of people gets agency over time? Like, how do you think about both the technology and its ultimate impact it may have on sort of a underrepresented population?
I did write a book about this, Steve. It's called The War on Normal People. It predicted AI decimating the most common livelihoods in America. And then I tried to forecast what would happen. And my forecasts were that people would go home, drink themselves to death, become radicalized down internet rabbit holes, and occasionally emerge to kill themselves or kill someone else. And so that's where I see things heading. I mean, it like The War on Normal People is a dark title. People think of me as a very
that was a pretty dark conclusion for someone who generally rallied a bunch of people around optimism in your election, I gotta say.
I'm a fairly optimistic entrepreneurial type by nature, but I'm also a data guy. And so if you ask me what happens to the data, by the way, the portrait I just painted was more around men.
Yeah.
Women are much less likely to get radicalized online in those ways. Women are more likely to volunteer in the community, go back to school, take care of an ailing loved one. Men, computer use shoots up, alcohol and gambling frequency shoot up, volunteering goes down, and they generally withdraw. So it's very gendered what happens, but like you're going to have that happen to millions of people because AI is going to do away with call center workers, many retail workers, many warehouse workers, and eventually truckers. And being a truck driver is the most common job in 29 states. 94% male, 10 to 20% are ex-military. So that there are going to be a lot of dislocated Americans. The Tyler Cowen calls it the bad men problem. We're going to have a bad man problem
Wow.
Some could argue we even already have a bad man problem.
100%. Like, the stuff I talk about, if you look for it right now, can you find like steps in the path? Like, totally. I mean, it's not like when I mention like someone's going to get radicalized, they're going to emerge and kill themselves. I mean, like you can like think of a half dozen examples, and unfortunately, like that stuff augurs poorly for what we're going to see more of when AI really ramps up. Now it's hitting different populations. When I ran in 2019, 2020, I was talking about call center workers and service workers, but it's really doing a number on recent college graduates right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hard to find a job out there nowadays with a good degree from a good school.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the first time. And if I'd run on that, probably no one would have cared. Everyone would have been like, I'm like, college graduates aren't going to be able to get a job. They'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like it was,
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't laugh because, like did I think this was going to happen? Not in this order, not at this speed, not at this pace.
And let's just, for our listeners, you wrote this book in 2018.
Yes, 2018.
Well before ChatGPT was a thing.
Oh yeah, when
AI
ChatGPT came out, I was like, oh, is it here? And if anyone wants to check it out, I mean,
we can link to it in show notes.
It was a very significant bestseller, and at the time, I suppose, But like I point to it, it's like, look, guys, in 2018, like this is where I saw things going. I am looking at producing a sequel next year, tentatively called The End of Normal, and try and forecast again because a lot has changed in 8 years.
Yeah,
where do you think The End of Normal goes?
To weird places, Steve, to very, very odd places. But to the work you all are doing, do I think that there are opportunities to overhaul some dysfunctional systems and try and bring costs down and deliver healthcare to people in better ways? I do think so. I mean, there is going to be a lot of institutional failure upcoming. And then the question is like, is something better going to come to replace it? And I know that's a lot of what you guys work on.
Yeah, I want to talk about the positive, but just to stick on that, like I'm so curious. You thought a lot about this. You called this early. Like, are you worried about a scenario where machines are overlords and there's sort of an existential risk to humanity?
So I'm not as much of an AGI guy as some others, like artificial general intelligence becoming our masters. I don't foresee that in the next handful of years. Some other people hype it up and say like, oh yeah, AGI is coming in like 2027, 2028. It's like, I'm dubious, but you don't need anything close to AGI to replace 2 million call center workers. So that to me is the intermediate effect that you can put your finger on and say, oh, that's happening for sure. I mean, I talk to CEOs who are doing away with their customer service departments as we speak. And have I ridden in a Waymo? Yes, I have. And it takes one ride to become used to it. And then you look around at all the people who are driving Ubers and eventually trucks. So there are trends you can have confidence in, well short of the Terminator style. AGI is going to, and I don't mean to make light of that stuff because some very, very smart people I know are deeply concerned about that. But that's not tops on my list.
Can I ask you a question? Right now, federal government policy, as far as I can tell, is to not regulate AI. To basically, I think the argument I'm trying, I have a certain political stripe, but if I were to try to give them credit, it's like other foreign nations are going to move really quickly, and we need to move as quickly as possible to win the war against what we might consider, adversaries. I think that's the argument, if there is one theoretical through line. I'm curious how you feel about that, and what would you recommend that we do at a federal level, or maybe even at a state level? I guess one of the other arguments is we have to have one federal law so that there's not 50 different state laws. But curious your take on how we should regulate this stuff.
Yes, I agree with you. That is the current approach. And it's US versus China. And so if you get the federal government revved up about that and say, guys, don't hold us back or we're going to lose to China, they'll all be working for the Chinese. Do you want that? And then they'll be like, heck no, I don't want that. So what do you need? And then you have data centers and like tons of other stuff that requires massive energy and water for cooling and like a bunch of other, I mean, there is like a ton, as you all know, hundreds of billions of dollars being spent in this direction. I mean, it's driving the stock market, it's driving a lot of our economy, et cetera, et cetera. I think that the government is doing too little on this front. I think the government has essentially abdicated its judgment to the AI companies and said, look, you guys know best, go, go, go. What do you need from us? Let's help you. If I were president right now, I would, by the way, if you look at the American public, something like 85, 88% of Americans want more to be done about the excesses of AI. And 70% are worried it's going to take their job. Like that's where the people are, and then the government's like, let's just go full steam ahead. So I would make a list of 5 to 10 concerns that the average American has about AI, and say, okay, AI companies, like, we will get on board and help you if you can address number one, how do I know that I'm not going to get like my identity stolen, or that when my mom calls me, I have to get a password from my mom because it could be an AI bot pretending to be my mom. Like, concern number one. Concern number two, what do I do about the decimation of human creatives because you're going to replace all the artists and designers and eventually actors and movie makers, like with AI, writers too, no, number three, what do we do about all the folks who are going to lose their jobs? Like, what's the plan there? And Dario Amodei, who's the CEO of one of these companies, raised his hand and said, look, you should tax us because we're going to get rid of all the entry-level white-collar jobs and unemployment's going to spike, and you all are going to be very sad about that. And so if one of the CEOs raises their hand and suggests that, then you should take them up on it. You should be like, hey, guys, like, you guys are going to be worth like billions and trillions. You might as well start like the transition action fund. And that, by the way, this was my grand plan as president, was like, we're going to have an AI tax and a compute tax. We're going to give everyone $1,000 a month. That makes things more palatable, and like that might even be low today. By the way, to me, this is instrumental for healthcare reform too. Because if you look at all those people in Pittsburgh and Nashville, it's like, hey, after we get rid of these inefficiencies, you all are out of a job, but at least, you have like a massive transition fund that you can draw on, and we can like do things together, like, or have like actual convos about it. Right now, none of that is happening. And so you have this desperation then around trying to protect your livelihood, because you sense if you lose your livelihood, you're fucked.
No one's coming to save you.
No one's coming to save you. Like, and so then you're going to have like a more of like a dog eat dog battle for protection. And by the way, who's going to be at the front of that line? Healthcare providers.
Totally.
Yes.
By the way, I wanted to click on that because like that's the thing that I'm just so curious how it plays out. I mean, you've been in politics, you've been active in lots of communities. Like, the largest employer in every community, as far as I know, is the healthcare organizations, right? I went to school in New Haven. Like, the University Hospital is the largest employer, right? And so how does this play out? Because ultimately, like, it starting at the back office and RCM and some of the transactional, infrastructure that we talked about, but ultimately it's going to come for care, right? Because these machines are going to be able to do higher level ordered radiology, and presumably it should solve one of the issues we have, which is the undersupply of caregivers, right? But that's also going to come at a cost. Like, how do you see that playing out in each metropolitan area? Because they're very influential political organizations, healthcare institutions.
I mean, I said they're at the front of the line, and I think they're going to just make a straightforward argument to political leaders. You cannot get rid of human healthcare providers. It needs to be a human. And then the legislators will happily comply. They'll pass like a, gotta be human, Human Healing Act, something like that. It's like, gotta be human to provide. And it's like, who's going to vote against the Human Healing Act? Like, nobody. The argument's going to be like, you need the jobs, you need the human touch. No AI can do what we can do. And then like that, some of us will be looking up being like, really? Like, I don't know if that's great, but that this is one of the most powerful special interests there is. Yeah. And if you're a political leader,
totally,
like, what's the option? It's like, hey, I'm going to go against you guys. Like, I'm not going against you guys. Like, I'd much rather go against the interest of the average poor American, because again, the average poor American who doesn't get that healthcare because it's hoarded in that healthcare system or that hospital, that like that person can't touch my political future in the way that the healthcare lobby can.
So you think caregiving is protected ultimately from AI influence?
Yeah. The AMA, very powerful lobby. I mean, if you had a more sensible system in America, we'd have twice as many primary care doctors right now. It's just that, the AMA has essentially capped supply. I told a joke on one of the debate stages. I'm Asian, so I know a lot of doctors. I took some shit for that. But, did I go to college with a bunch of Asian kids who were pre-med who all wanted to be doctors, and like some of them made it, some of them didn't? Yes, I did. And did the ones that just didn't do well enough on Orgo or whatever, like, could some of them have made fine doctors? Sure. You know what I mean? Like there's no reason why you had like such a difficult limitation on the number.
Yeah. You'd mentioned the $1,000 a month, which was one of your platforms. I mean, you became known as the UBI guy for universal basic income. And I think a lot of people think of that still today as like purely social welfare. But actually, research suggests that UBI may also generate like substantial health benefits. And it does feel like it's more of in the conversation, but you were early on it. And so just curious, like what sold you on UBI? Like where did you get that idea? Because you were really one of the early people to popularize it.
Well, thank you. So I was on a panel with a young black mayor named Michael Tubbs, who was the mayor of Stockton, California, and we were both talking about UBI. And then afterwards, he came to me and said, Andrew, you can get away with shit I could never get away with, because if a young black mayor says everyone should get money, everyone just laughs me out of the room. But if the magical Asian man from the future says that we should give everyone money, then be like, oh, like that, I should really think about that a bit more. I could very clearly see that we were going to get rid of most American entry level jobs. If you look at our population, it's around 2/3 non-college grads. The most average so the average American is doing one of 5 jobs: clerical and administrative, retail, food service, food prep, truck driving, transportation, or manufacturing, which, believe it or not, is still number 5. So my friends in Silicon Valley, it's like, hey guys, what are we going to do to these jobs? They're like, oh, we're going to get rid of as many of them as possible. So with that in mind, and by the way, I wrote this book 2017, came out 2018. You know what was top of mind for me? Trump's first victory. I mean, that's what got me into public life. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I get it. Like if you shove enough people to the side, Trump wins. So let me try to cure the conditions, because in my mind, if everyone had economic security and safety, you don't get Trump. Like you get Trump in an attitude, in an environment of scarcity and fear and tribalism and all these things. So I was influenced by a book called Raising the Floor that came out in 2015. And it said, hey, we're going to need universal basic income and someone should run for president on this. And I saw that and I was like, yeah, he's right. Someone should do that. I didn't think it was going to be me. But then, like in 2017, I called the author up and was like, hey, anyone taking you up on this? And he was like, no. And I was like, then I will. And then he said, who are you? Those are some of the things that led me there. I mean, it's aging very well. I mean, like people come up to me on the street every day just saying like, we need universal basic income.
Hey Andrew, where there have been pilots run on UBI, I believe. Like where has it been successful in your mind that led you to think, wow, this is something that not only works in theory, or I think would work in theory, but actually has worked in practice?
Yeah, I have some of the implementations in my book, The War on Normal People, but the one that really stuck with me was that an Indian tribe essentially got UBI because of some casino situation. And so you had 2 groups, one of which got UBI and one of which didn't. So you could like study them over time. And the UBI group, the kids grew up to be more conscientious and agreeable and had better academic outcomes and learning outcomes. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's pretty freaking clear to me that the money created a more stable home environment where kids could learn and grow up. And so you had other data points where the money goes to food, fuel, clothing, transportation, in some cases trying to get a job, in some select cases, like maybe like business formation. But the things you could say with some high level of confidence is that mental health will improve, domestic violence will go down, and some elements of physical health will get better.
You basically create a picture, by the way, this is not being critical on, nor do I think this word is a bad thing, but there's going to be so many people that are going to need social support system out there in America in the future that maybe our country becomes more socialist. I guess a question for you, rather than, always socialism has been pit against democracy in people's minds, right? Or capitalism, right? And I'm curious, like, do you think we head more towards that world, given all the macro changes that you're talking about here?
Steve, what I say is that universal basic income is capitalism where income doesn't start at zero. I mean, the fact is that that capitalism requires people to have money to participate in the consumer market in order for things to work. And if I get rid of the livelihoods of millions or even tens of millions of Americans, then they're not going, one, they're going to have a very unfavorable opinion of capitalism, but 2, that they're not going to be meaningfully participating in anything that supports like their local business or their community. So that was my argument. It's like, look, this is like, I called it human-centered capitalism. Socialism, particularly, by the way, is when government owns the means of production. That's not, that's not, and if you had if you did want to keep tracing the steps, I mean, AI is developed from data that each of us sort of contributed to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. None of us saw anything. So,
Sure.
by the way, like small question, and this probably happened to you, Hallie. Did I get a note from my publisher saying, hey, your book is now going to be incorporated into AI, and they are offering you $1,500 for them to be able to use your thoughts and ideas? Take it or leave it. And then what did I do? I took it because I was like, well, shit, at least I get nothing and they're going to do it anyway. Like it says. I mean, well, like one of these was a
Yeah.
legal settlement where the AI company already did it. And then they're like, hey, great news. We got you $1,500 for that book use. So as a published author, like there was a tiny recognition of the data that I contributed to AI. But the average American,
Yeah,
contributed
nothing. Yeah,
and will see nothing and
right.
Yeah.
contributed tens of thousands of Facebook likes and, like data points,
Tweets. Yeah.
tweets, yeah, whatever. And so yeah, like that's my point of view on it, Steve.
I want to switch gears and talk about regulatory capture a lot. You've talked about the cartel in healthcare and this way that big players protect their interests, even at the cost of patient outcomes. Where do you see regulatory capture most clearly at work in healthcare?
Wow. I mean, we cited a couple examples already, including in my opinion, really ridiculous undersupply of physicians and medical professionals. I think some of the licensing stuff is weird, where if you move across state lines, it's
Yeah.
like, did human anatomy change
Yeah.
between
Did my body
Louisiana and
change?
Alabama?
No.
Like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
shouldn't I just like make it so that a nurse can be a nurse, like
Yeah.
a PA can be a PA?
No, there are businesses that just help clinicians get certified in all the states.
Yeah, so those things strike me as totally illogical and inefficient. But there are myriad others. I mean, geez, like I think what happened with the opioid crisis was like totally regulatory capture in its way,
Yep.
where like if you'd had people who were not asleep at the switch, they'd be like, wait a minute, what's going on?
Yeah.
What are we prescribing
Yeah.
to people? As soon as
Yep.
you started to see that the effects were going to be negative, and then after the fact, now, I mean, Steve, it sounds like you went to Yale. I mean, it's like that. I think there was like there might have been like a Yale University building that had the Sackler name
Sacklers.
on it.
Yeah,
Probably
yeah.
Harvard too, not to single out Yale. Like the
No.
Sacklers were very much part of the firmament. So those were some of the big examples, Hallie, but you
Yeah.
could come up with like a dozen more.
Yeah, the list goes on. Do you think it's possible to just take money out of politics, make it harder for these large organizations to influence regulatory?
So there are efforts in that direction. I'm on the advisory board of an organization called American Promise that's trying to have a constitutional amendment. Now, we're very, very far from that because, you need like the vast majority of states to sign on. I think we have like 12 states, something along those lines. But that's the right answer. Everyone
Yeah.
knows. I'm friends with Mark Cuban, who is doing what he can to circumvent the PBMs and
PBMs,
others
yeah.
like through.
Yep. We've had him on the show.
Oh, great. Oh,
Yeah.
by the way, cost plus drugs inspired what I'm doing with Noble Mobile
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
because I was like, can you cost plus something else in American life that we're getting screwed on? And then I went through the average American household's cost structure, which will not surprise any of you. It goes housing, healthcare, education, food, fuel, transportation, media, and then wireless data. So the average American is spending $83 a month on their wireless data. You guys are probably spending more than that. You're probably spending like
For
100 to
sure.
120 on AT&T, I'm guessing. I was $140 a
Verizon.
month on Verizon just by
Right.
myself. So the average American spending 83 a month on our wireless. The average European is spending 35 a month. So that 48 a month times 12 times, a couple hundred million of us, you wind up with $100 billion in extra expense being paid by the American public every year for what is a commodity. I mean, it's the definition of a commodity
Yeah.
at this point. So we hammered out a deal where my $140 went down to about 48. So I'm saving myself I'm saving myself over $1,000 a year. And the the mental health element of Noble Mobile, which is the
Yeah.
name of my company, is that we pay you more based upon any unused data you have at the end of the month. So you start with a $20 data dividend. And then at the end of the month, we subtract any data you used out and about below 20 gigs and then give you the rest in money. And so the average Noble Mobile user is spending about $42 a month, about half the national average. But then they're also using 17% less screen time in
Yeah.
month 2 than in month 1, because people are simple. And if you start measuring and rewarding behavior, then they'll be like, oh, if I'm doom scrolling, I should stop because I'm literally costing myself money. And I know this in part because I'm a heavy phone user and I'm as guilty of doom scrolling as the next person. And then I'm like, oh, what am I doing? So, thank you, Mark Cuban, for the inspiration. And hopefully we can do for the wireless industry what Mark is doing for generic drugs.
I love this, and as a parent, I love this. In particular, I'm sure Halle can say so the
Yeah.
same. Like it's amazing how addictive these technologies are. I mean, they're addictive for me, and as you admitted, Andrew, addictive for you. But like for kids, I just like
Yeah.
it's unbelievable how these,
Yeah.
device manufacturers and gaming companies they've kind of honestly created like the next cigarette, right? In terms of, the power that they have to influence young kids' brains. So, I love what you're doing.
I'm a parent too, Steve, and I feel your pain.
Yeah. Like, what do you do? Yeah.
Your kids will just like run towards whatever screens in the room, nothing else.
Yeah.
One of my jokes as a parent was that when I was a kid, a movie was a treat.
Right.
And then now we're like
Yeah.
grateful if our kids will actually sit for a movie. Like the treat has become like a
Yeah.
please eat my nourishing meal of like 90-minute long form narrative because your attention span's so short.
Thanks to
Well,
YouTube. YouTube is the worst.
what else do you think we do? Because this is a self-perpetuating issue, right? You're more addicted to the phone. You're more recluse, right? You're less intertwined with your society. You become more, sort of like cultural in terms of the little world that you live in, right? That propagates itself. Like all these things are feeding them on themselves, right? And how do you think we solve it other than the wonderful work you're doing? Like what are some other societal things we need to do on this issue in your mind?
So you guys must have heard of The Anxious Generation and Jonathan Haidt.
Yes. Yes.
And so the case he's making is, look, like this is not like every family for itself situation. This is like we should get our acts together as a society situation.
Yeah.
So 39 out of 50 states have now kicked smartphones out of middle schools. And guys, I got to admit, I've been through a lot over the last number of years. If you'd asked me before The Anxious Generation, like, can a book change the world? Can a book change regulation in 40 out of 50 states? I've been like doubtful. And then the fact that Jonathan Haidt did it with The Anxious Generation, I had dinner with him a couple months ago and I was commending him, congratulating him. And he said, Andrew, it helps when you write a book that is the number one fear and concern of half of American parents. Because
We
Steve,
see it. We see
yeah,
it
we all
every
see
day,
it.
right? We're like,
We-
I know your attitude after you're watching YouTube versus when you wake up in the morning. It's like you can see
Yeah,
it
so
very clearly.
it took John to compile the data and make
Yeah.
the case and then sit down with the state legislators and the governors being like, guys, every parent wants you to do this, so please do it. And one article described it as the last bipartisan issue because this is red states and blue states. Everyone's like, my kids'
Yeah.
brains are being fried. So that to me, Steve, is like the big case to make is like 2 years ago, again, like if you were to say, hey, getting phones out of middle schools, we'd be like, oh, good luck with that. But then now it's happening. And so the next frontier, my opinion, is high schools. And there are certain countries that have already gotten smartphones out of high schools, and shocker, the kids learn better, they're happier, their scores go up. So that's the next frontier
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah,
And
by
then,
the way, this happens in private schools, a lot of private schools, which
Yeah.
is we talk about
And
the sort of rich versus poor divide. Like
Yeah.
this is already happening in the schools where there are extra resources, like
and
woken
social
up to
media
this.
bans, which is, I don't have a girl, but social media for young girls is horrific.
The
looking at
worst.
that data.
yeah,
Yeah.
it makes them all anxious and depressed.
Yeah. Yep.
So, Steve, you'll appreciate this because you both are nerds like me. But screen time is now an economically inferior good in that the poor consume more of it and the rich try to consume less. Like if you go to some rich parent's house, they're much more likely to have a no screen time rule or like
Well, they're probably
or
not.
provision.
They might not be single. They might not be single parents working
Yes.
multiple jobs. Like, yeah, of course.
They have
Yeah.
nannies. They have people
Yeah,
They have
right,
entertaining their
nannies.
children.
They like
Yeah.
schedule their
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
in activities in part to
Right.
keep them
Yeah.
off the screen.
Yep.
Right.
So other economically inferior goods, because I think it's a fascinating concept, potatoes and ramen. potatoes, ramen, and screen time. It's like if you're poor, you consume more of them. But that message has been really helpful for Noble Mobile because it's like, look, this isn't a money thing. This is like a humanity values thing. Like if you value yourself and your brain and your relationships, you're gonna want to spend a little bit less time on what one comedian calls our rectangles of sadness.
Yes. Can I tell you something funny? I just got a new iPhone this weekend and I cannot for the life of me set up email. I tried and it was like you need to use passcode on your other device, but I sold my other device back to Apple. And I was like, "You know what? I'm not going to figure this out until the new year." And so I took off Slack, I don't have email, so I'm trying for the rest of the month to not have anything useful on my phone. It's basically a camera again. So we'll see how that goes. But we had Frances Haugen on the show. She is the Facebook whistleblower. And I asked her what companies could do, right? Because their business model is incented to keep kids and adults addicted to their apps. One of the things that she said that stuck with me, and Andrew, maybe if you're not doing this, you could do this, is slow the apps down at night so that they're less pleasant to use. And you see that people will get off the apps, social media apps, faster if it just takes a while to load.
There's more latency. Interesting. Yeah.
Wow. That's fascinating. I'll look into that. I will say Noble, I use Noble, obviously. It's fast and robust. It's a great experience. So we don't do that.
But you could have a setting. You could have a setting.
You could have a self-setting.
Help me get less addicted.
Self-select hours, being like, you know what? I do not want to doom scroll after 10 p.m. So feel free to slow down my social media apps after
or
that.
your kids.
When you log on.
Or like, I want it to be slow for my kids. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is what Noble's trying to equip families with. It's good fun. We're working on an app that tells you how many times you pick up your phone every day, because that's like a fascinating data point. The average American, by the way, is between 85 and 120. And so if you can it's a little, one of the things we found is like, if you measure, report, and reward, then people will be like, okay, now I'll keep track of it.
I mean, if we brought our grandparents back to this generation, I mean, the world has gotten better, of course, but I remember talking to my son about why he shouldn't have a phone. Oh, we're trying to hold out as long as we can. And he's like, come on, Dad, everyone has it. I'm like, well, yeah, but then no one talks to each other. He's like, that's not true. And we were sitting at a table and literally right over his shoulder were 4 kids, or maybe 5, all on the phone, not talking to each other. And I'm like, Charlie, turn around. And he goes, all right, Dad, you got me. But it's like, if the old generation saw this generation, they'd be like, what are you doing? There's no conversation.
Yeah. And Steve, so much of it for your kids and my kids, it's like, what are the other kids doing? If there's a norm where kids aren't on it, then your kid doesn't care. Of course. But if all the other kids are on it, then you're like, I don't want to be like a freaking weirdo who's left out.
Yeah.
You're an optimistic guy. We've talked a lot about things that we should be concerned about. And by the way, we like focusing on those issues on our podcast because people want to try to solve them. But what's the bull case for America, especially in the AI world? Like what could you paint as the case where actually it's a net win for our country, for humanity, for society?
I mean, AI is going to enable all sorts of new treatments and innovations in the healthcare space. It's going to increase the odds of us finding new compounds, cure cancer, Alzheimer's. A lot of things are going to be much more feasible. And it's not just in healthcare. Material sciences, energy, demarcation of the way we measure value has been limited resources and scarcity and not enough to go around. But if you pull a few levers forward with the assistance of AI, you genuinely could be staring at abundance. Now, how that abundance gets shared, that's what's called a political question. You would hope that you'd have a very, in my opinion, different looking political system that could reckon with that. GDP per person right now in the United States of America is $87,000 a head. And AI is going to spike that pretty much no matter what else you look at. It's like, look, you could do a number on a lot of jobs, fine. But GDP per head is going to go up. It's going to start pushing 6 figures due to AI. And so you could be in position to make very, very different economic relationships work and make sense. So that's my bull case. And I do think the U.S. is going to be the leader in AI for the foreseeable.
Interesting. Andrew, so abundance goes up and you can reinvest in social supports that keeps the compact together. is one scenario that you could see happening potentially.
Yeah, that's right.
Andrew, this is our very last episode of 2025. Going into 2026, what is like one piece of advice you could leave for our listeners who are healthcare innovators?
This is going to be a little bit self-serving coming from the founder of a carrier or whatnot, but really do think about your relationship with your phone, because our phone now is sort of a part of our brain and a part of our body. If I take your phone away from you, you feel like a part of you is missing.
Yeah, true. Accurate.
There are some aspects of that relationship that are not spectacular, particularly for one's mental health, one's focus, one's relationships. And again, I'm as guilty of this as anyone. Like, will I be sitting there looking at my phone while one of my kids is around, thus both ignoring my child and being a role model for the kind of screen addicted behavior you then lecture them about, like, an hour later? Yes, that is a accurate description. But we have to do better for ourselves and our kids, and it does start with us. So one major tip I will impart is try not to sleep with your phone in your room. Just get your phone in another room and then go to bed. And then people ask me, like, how will I wake up? And it's like, get something called an alarm clock. They
They
cost
sell those anymore.
$15. You can like put it there, but like just
Yeah.
get the phone out of the bedroom. And
Yeah.
that would be a fine New Year's resolution if right now you sleep with it next to your bed.
Awesome.
So awesome. This was an amazing tour de force of a conversation. Makes sense given the wide range of things you've done in your career and thought about and produced to our society. So Andrew, really appreciate your leadership on so many fronts and joining us today on The Heart of Healthcare.
Thank you, guys. If anyone wants to keep up with me, I do write a weekly newsletter at andrewyang.com that's on Substack. And I have a new book coming out in February called Hey Yang, Where's My $1,000? It's like, the alternate title was, Hey, am I racist or are you Andrew Yang? So I'm trying to stay positive and generative, but thank you guys for having me, and congrats on the work you're doing.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.